welcome you all to day two of the 2021 edition of the Energy and Resources Institute's annual flagship event, the World Sustainable Development Summit, being held virtually under the broad theme Redefining Our Common Future, Safe and Secure Environment for All, from the 10th to the 12th of February 2021. We start today's plenary remembering and commemorating our mentor, Dr R K Pachauri. I would like to invite Mr. Nitin Desai, the chairman of TERI, to give his opening remarks.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure and yet a sad occasion for me. I would have very much liked Pachi to be here as we did this summit, but he left us about almost a year ago. And it's very important that we recognize his contribution because this summit is very much his creation. In fact, I got involved in TERI because of the summit. In those days, it was called the Delhi Sustainable Development Summit. I was in the UN. And when Dr. Pachauri was setting up this process, he was in touch with me and he roped me into the process. Of course, at that time, I came as a UN Under-Secretary General and participated in the meetings, the first 2 or 3 meetings. And in many ways, the thought that he had behind it is something which has been quite fruitful in the 20 years that we've had the summit. The thought was that the challenge that we face in terms of sustainable development, not just in climate, but in the whole area of sustainable development, is not just a challenge which can be left to governments to negotiate in conventions, etc. It's something which requires us to bring together other people who also shape how we use our resources, corporations, research institutions, activists, non-governmental organizations. And the whole idea behind the World Sustainable Development Summit was to provide a platform, a base for these people to come together. And very naturally, what we saw in this was a projection of vision, a projection of strategies, a projection of specific ideas, of many scientists coming out and giving their perceptions on how we ought to be approaching this subject. And more than that, bringing people together physically also led to networking. People coming together, forming partnerships, launching events, launching projects, etc. And that is what I think was the thought behind the Sustainable Development Summit, which he had. And in many ways, it's at a global level what TERI should be at a national level and has to a certain extent been at the national level together. The governments are not the only actors in this whole process of sustainable development. There are many others, and I think what Patrice launched was a major exercise in bringing together many, many stakeholders into this exercise. Let us hope that it continues to work. And every time we have this summit, we should all remember the fact that here was a man who thought this up, and long before people were talking about it globally. So once again, I'm very happy to say this, but also sad that Patchy is not here with us to launch this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Now I'd like to call on Dr. Ajay Mathur, the Director General of TERI, for his remarks.
Thank you, Juhi. As Mr. Desai mentioned, this is both a happy occasion when we commemorate Dr. Pachauri, but also a sad occasion as it is almost a year since he left us. But this Sustainable Development Summit is a living memory of his ambitions and of his ability to bring people together. As Mr. Desai mentioned, the early 2000s were years in which governments had started talking about climate change, and the only other stakeholder was civil society, sometimes very much at odds with government policy. What Dr. Pachauri did through this summit was to bring together a range of stakeholders. Obviously, the governments and civil society, but also corporates, also financial institutions. And that together created an environment in which future vision could be shared and best practices could be exchanged. This has obviously proved to be a reason for the success and the continued presence of the summit over 2 decades. The fact that every Prime Minister of India, every President of India has come to the inauguration speaks of its continuing relevance. The fact that this, as the Prime Minister said yesterday, the fact that this is an event, a fora through which international discussions can occur within the national context is, I think, something that we all are extremely proud of. On this occasion, as we remember Dr. Pachauri, we look both to the years that he led the summit, and we will have a short video immediately after this, which looks at these memories. And then we have 4 colleagues representing different parts, the different stakeholders, governments, but also civil society, also academia, also industry, who will share their thoughts with us. And I'm extremely thankful to them for agreeing to come online and to share these thoughts. After those videos, we will request Dr. Saroj Pachauri to share her thoughts with us. So without further ado, let's remember Dr. Pachauri.
1960. Rajendra Pachauri was a student at La Martiniere College, Lucknow. 1974. TERI was established in Mumbai. 1982. 8 years and 2 PhDs later, R K Pachauri joined TERI as director. And a vision began to take shape. From funding research to becoming a pioneering research institute itself, TERI grew from a one-room office to a global presence. In 1989, TERI became one of the first voices to address the threat of climate change. Today, as a think tank on environmental issues, TERI's work influences many, from the farmers in the fields to corporate honchos and policymakers.
I would like TERI to present before the people of our country a global vision on energy security.
Over the years, Dr. Pachauri and TERI became synonymous with the cause of the environment.
Dr. Pachauri first started educating me about the work of TERI back in the late 1980s. I have been very impressed with the work of TERI, and throughout the world there is widespread respect for what this institute does.
Rajendra Pachauri to come forward to receive the gold medal.
In 2007, under the remarkable chairmanship of Dr. R K Pachauri, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change received the Nobel Peace Prize for its unparalleled work on climate change.
Will those responsible for decisions in the field of climate change at the global level listen to the voice of science and knowledge, which is loud and clear? If they do so at Bali and beyond, then all my colleagues in the IPCC and those thousands toiling for the cause of science would feel doubly honored at the privilege I am receiving today on their behalf.
Can I now request that we share the thoughts that have been put on by various colleagues who have at various points of time taken part in the Sustainable Development Summits and reflect the various stakeholders who have been part of the summit.
It's hard to believe, but Saturday this week is 1 year since Dr. Pachauri passed away far too early. It's very difficult to think of any other person playing such a critical role in putting climate change and environment center stage in global affairs. I still recall vividly when he came to Norway to receive the Nobel Prize. He filled every room with his intellect. He inspired us by his humanity, and when he told us that the whole universe is one family, we said, yes, that's how we need to work together as one humanity to solve the big problems of our day. Pachauri was not just a great intellectual, he was also a very practical man. Educated in Bihar and in North Carolina, and starting his career in Indian Rail in Varanasi, and being an engineer, of course he understood that poor people need energy, and that's a practical problem, not just a philosophical one. So he found all the practical solutions. That's also why he became an institution builder, establishing TERI, now a global renowned think tank on environment and energy issue. Establishing the Delhi Summit on Sustainable Development, bringing people together for the dialogue from all over the world. I've had the pleasure to attend a number of times. And then, of course, bringing the International Panel on Climate Change out of a kind of sleeping situation into the central institution for climate knowledge globally. And towards the end of this year, establishing the POP movement, Protect Our Planet, which is now ably led by his son, Ash. When we think of Pachauri, Dr. Pachauri or Pachi, I think we all will recall most of all his deep humanity rooted in his experience and background from India. He never became a global bureaucrat. He was always Indian in his soul. And to honor him, what more can we do than to make sure that the global and Indian movement for the environment and green development become stronger?
I'm extremely honored to have the opportunity to speak at this august occasion, and very touched that we will be using this time to memorialize, commemorate, and celebrate the life of Dr. Rajendra Pachauri. I had the pleasure of being associated with and knowing Pachi for well on 20 years in one way or the other. And he has been, as a climate activist, as a climate policy maker, as a scientist, a great influence on my life as on the lives of so many others around the world. And in that respect, I have great admiration for his contribution to the world, his contribution to TERI over so many years of great leadership, his contribution to the IPCC, his contribution to the creation of the WSDS and now the WSDS, and on me personally as a human being in my long-term and evolving journey on climate change. He really had a tremendous ability to motivate passionately so many people, to bring together great gatherings of like-minded climate warriors to focus on a huge and the most important challenge of our generation. He did that with courage, he did that with skill, and he did that with tremendous intelligence. And I feel deeply indebted to him for his great contribution. And also, of course, the great track record of these summits year upon year, which will remain one out of many of his wonderful legacies. So we remember you very fondly for your brave work on climate change, Dr. Pachauri. Thank you.
Dear participants in the celebration of the WSDS 20 years journey, my congratulations to TERI for this important initiative. I was, as president of the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, invited by Dr. Pachauri for cooperation in launching the summit. I recognized the importance of India's role for the progress of the global sustainable development and the leadership and inspiration that Dr. Pachauri could provide. I have very fond memories from my participation in the summit, and I developed a strong friendship with Dr. Pachauri and the many capable TERI staff members during my many years of participation in the summit. Dr. Pachauri and I together launched the opening curtain raiser event at the summits with global business leaders and Indian representatives from business and government. I'm very pleased to see that WSDS has continued as a meeting place for sustainable development up to this day. The summit has been an inspiration for the progress of sustainable development. And the agenda globally, and in particular for emerging economies, has been very important. I hope that TERI will continue with the WSDS platform to stimulate further actions towards a sustainable world. I wish you a great success with your important task. Best regards from me from Stockholm, a very wintry and cold Stockholm, which is probably somewhat different from the weather that you will have in India. But great success for the upcoming event, and as I said, I hope that this will continue also in the future. Thank you for the opportunity to give this address.
Excellencies, colleagues, and friends. First, I would like to thank TERI for the invitation to say a few words on this momentous occasion. 20th anniversary of the Sustainable Development Forum is a very appropriate occasion also to celebrate the life of my dear friend Pachi. On Saturday, it will be a year since Pachi is no longer with us in person, but he lives in our memories and his salient achievements through our own work and his exemplary dedication and tireless efforts to put the world on the sustainable development pathway. This is the vision we all need to follow. So he is with us and will continue through his legacy to show us the way despite continuing challenges ahead. I met Pachi some 30 years ago for the first time, just as he was building TERI more or less single-handedly, and I continued to work closely with his tireless leadership on energy and sustainable development challenges. Later, when he became the IPCC chair, this work continued on the 4th and the 5th assessment report, where I was also a lead author among many. It was during Pachi's tenure that IPCC received the Nobel Prize for Peace, a distinction that is commensurate with Pachi's monumental achievements and legacy. I had the opportunity to be at the first Sustainable Development Forum in 2001 and have been dedicated participants during the first decade and an occasional during the following year, and does know how essential this institution is, and that is an important legacy of Pachi as well. Pachi and I collaborated on a number of important initiatives over the past years, and would like to highlight on a more personal note that we were teaching jointly a postgraduate course in Montenegro in 2019. Some of you may know that I'm originally from former Yugoslavia, and it meant a lot to me that Pachi devoted so much time to work with students from the Western Balkans on communicating the need to transform the world to a just and safe place without leaving anybody behind. The key question, however, is whether humanity will have the political will to collectively achieve the essential transformation and avoid pitfalls of my country first or my region first logic that is spreading throughout the world. It is for us all to choose which direction to go, as Pachi always pointed out, that a sustainable future for all is within reach if we act decisively and in unison. I wish you a very successful and inspirational forum celebrating Pachi's great achievements and visionary leadership. May many sustainable development fora follow in his honor. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much to everyone, to Eric Solheim, to Uday Khemka, to Bjorn Stixon, as well as to Naki Chenoweth. Can I now request Dr. Saroj Pachauri and Dr. R K Pachauri's better half to share her thoughts with us on this occasion. Dr. Pachauri.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this session. I am deeply touched. I'm deeply touched and very honored to be a part of this, to participate in this important session as a part of the summit. You know, I remember very vividly the very first summit that Pachi organized. He was so excited. He had worked so hard and his team had worked so hard to put it together. And as in the case of all future summits, that summit was also, the chief guest was the Prime Minister. And I remember what he said in his inaugural speech. Pachi said, you know, I want to do this event every year if the Prime Minister supports me. I didn't quite believe it at that time, but I was proven wrong because the following year he organized yet another summit, and the following year, and the year after, and many more years to come. And we're now at the 20th year of this summit. I know that he would be extremely happy that his colleagues at TERI have continued the work that he began with such zest and zeal. As everybody knows, TERI was Pachi's first love. I came nowhere close. He lived and breathed TERI. He devoted 30 years of his life to TERI. He spent his nights and days at TERI. He really worked and slaved for TERI. And he started it from scratch. He nurtured it, he developed it painstakingly till it reached its present heights, where it is now considered a center of excellence as a world-class institution. And he would no doubt be very proud, but I am very proud. As you can tell from my words, I'm very proud of his achievements. I'm very proud of TERI. And in my mind, Pachi and TERI are synonymous somehow. I feel that Pachi is here with us today. I just feel his presence and I know he's very happy because I can see him smiling. He's smiling because he's so pleased that his colleagues have carried forward the work that he began. As somebody just said, it's going to be a year, a full year since he left us. On Saturday, it will be a year. So in a sense, this is also a very timely occasion. And I want to thank you all very much and wish you all the best in the years ahead as TERI carries the journey forward. My love and prayers are with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I now request Dr. Vibha Dhawan, distinguished fellow TERI, to give the closing remarks.
Vibha, you are muted.
Thanks so much. And really speaking, Mrs. Pachauri's address is leaving me speechless. Well, Dr. Pachauri is not with us physically, but I can say that he's in the hearts of millions. Every TERI colleague remembers him. And all the time, he's guiding us. So it is something, if Dr. Pachauri was there, we would be doing things like this. So I think every day, every TERI colleague, every TERIite remembers him at least 10 times, if not more. And he deserved to be so. Like if you want to write down what should be the leadership qualities, I think one will have to remember Dr. Pachauri. He was a visionary. He started talking about global warming, the impact of global warming on the poor, much before anyone could understand what it means. The recent tragedy in Chamoli, that's largely glaciers. So that is something he spoke at least 20 years back, if not earlier. He was an institute builder, and you rightly said that he started from the scratch, and look at it, TERI is a global institute today. A person who will always lead by example. It's not something that he will tell us to do and he himself is not practicing. That's not the case. simple things like you have to save money for Terry. So if you're on an overseas trip, why don't you eat a lot of breakfast and skip lunch so that you save money for Terry? So those are the ethos which many of us have imbibed from him. And one thing which he believed was that empower youngsters. And it was his faith in young colleagues that Terry could attain these heights, because they'll be given responsibility. And I'll again share one first example when I went to him with 3 quotations, and he just returned them to me and he said, you have to use the equipment, so don't come back to me, it's not working. So that was within few months of my joining Terry. So that's the kind of trust he proposed in his younger colleagues. It was always putting people first. So whatever their needs are, he'll look into those. He'll ignite young minds. It's remarkable. He'll remember every person's name, what that person is doing, what are his strengths and what are his weaknesses. And he'll work on the weaknesses of that person to bring out best in him or her. A man of foresight and sharp sight with, and working with their strengths and weaknesses. He himself was a perfectionist and he will accept nothing less from his colleagues either. So whatever your weak point is, he's repeatedly tell you some, and he'll work on it to ensure that the best come out of you. And one quality which was really unique in him was that he'll connect with children as well as the political leaders, heads of academic institutes, corporate leaders, and so on. So most of us, I should say that when we had young children, they would like to come to Terry only to meet Patchy Uncle. And Patchy Uncle will give them a small chocolate and he'll ask them how your studies are, what are you doing? So it was something like that kids always felt the lighter side of his, that he's so sweet. So why are you saying I have to reach office in time, or discipline and other things? So for him, it was a great uncle. And Dr. Pachauri, you always had the dream of that WSDS should be paddled to the World Economic Forum. And I think that's where we are. We are paddled to World Economic Forum in terms of sustainable science. So thank you for all what you have done. And I'm sure we all will follow the guiding principles that we have imbibed from you, and we'll take the legacy further. And thank you, ma'am, for giving wonderful address. Thank you.